It's inevitable, every time a wildly successful video game comes along, imitators quickly follow in its footsteps. The tradition began with Pong and Pac-Man clones, and that practice has continued on PCs, consoles, and smartphones ever since. Homages at best and blatant rip-offs at worst have always been a part of the game industry. I couldn't help but think of this after my first thrilling time playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in May of this year. You may have heard about this PC game. It's a somewhat familiar-looking military shooter, albeit with clever rules that gradually force dozens of players to a giant island's random center point. The result feels like a video game version of the Japanese film Battle Royale. The early access game is also setting records for concurrent player counts on Steam, which is particularly wild considering it costs $39.99, as opposed to popular free-to-play games like Dota 2. Before the player counts climb sky high, however, I had already predicted a very PUBG future. How long until other games rip this off? I said to my online team via voice chat, shortly after I was sniped while foolishly running across one of PUBG's open fields. The answer: about half a year. Other game studios have hinted at attaching PUBG-like modes to their own franchises, but Fortnite, the eventually free-to-play co-op shooter from Epic Games, is possibly the first big studio game to go all-in with PUBG fever. Its new player versus player, PvP, mode, dubbed Battle Royale, shoehorns many of PUBG's ideas into Fortnite's take on crafting and gunplay. This mode is currently in a limited test state, but it will soon become entirely free to play for all PC and PS4 gamers starting Tuesday, September 26. Ahead of that wider public launch, PUBG's publishing team at Bluehole Incorporated made a pretty strong statement on Friday. It reads like a warning shot before a major conflict. So this seems like a good time to look at the statement, at the ecosystem of games that imitate other games, and add my impressions of the very PUBG-like mode currently being tested in Fortnite. The meaty question: can other companies pull off such a tribute, either in practical or fun factor ways? Replicating the experience. Let's start with Bluehole's Friday statement, which the company describes as a response to community concern, meaning, not a declaration of legal intent. The money quote from the statement comes from Bluehole VP Chang-Han Kim. After listening to the growing feedback from our community and reviewing Fortnite Battle Royale's gameplay for ourselves, we are concerned that Fortnite may be replicating the experience for which PUBG is known. After that, Kim points out how often Epic has specifically called PUBG out by name while promoting Fortnite's new mode, which he says is not right. In one example, Epic announced the game's new mode by saying, "We love Battle Royale games like PUBG and thought Fortnite would make a great foundation for our own version." There's a mention of an ongoing relationship with Epic Games throughout PUBG's development, but Kim doesn't specify what that exactly means or whether it hints at any legally actionable issue of stolen work or violations of any private agreements between the companies. PUBG uses Epic's Unreal Engine 4 product, which Fortnite also uses to render its 3D content. Update: after this article was written, Bluehole clarified to PC Gamer that this arrangement was indeed the crux of its initial statement. The statement takes an unusual step of acknowledging a devil's advocate quote about PUBG-like games from the game's creator, Brendan PlayerUnknown Green. Other companies will, of course, enter the marketplace, but I would just hope they put their own spin on the game mode and not just make a carbon copy! The statement concludes with this vague hint at what's to come. The PUBG community has and continues to provide evidence of the many similarities as we contemplate further action, Kim says. Legal precedent? Bluehole seems to be intentionally vague in this statement, perhaps owing to the letter's response to community concern premise. Bluehole's staff, including developers of its games, are no strangers to responding to their online communities, and remaining silent in the face of fan response probably isn't an option. But walking up to the precipice of action and instead merely expressing grave concern leads to important follow-up questions. What exactly is being replicated? And what action could Bluehole actually take? Could Bluehole actually get anywhere near suing Epic? Very few allegations of your game copied my game go to trial. As Steve Golson, a developer of the original Ms. Pac-Man clone Crazy Otto, told a GDC crowd in March 2016, Game companies have traditionally been timid about suing copycat game makers and thus letting courts set sweeping precedents. In Golson's case, he believed that if a hacker or modder got a FAVO,